For a long while, the great American desert in the West was known as a place that could offer very little economic benefit. However, after the Santa Fe Trail was created, the Americans discovered the land richness in the West. This led to the proposal of the Kansas-Nebraska Act. This mentioned that the two territories, Kansas and Nebraska, would be formed in the Union. Under the Missouri Compromise, it states that new territories brought into the United States had to be a part of a pair. This way, one could become a slave state and the other would become a free state. Due to popular sovereignty, it was assumed that the South would take hold of Kansas and make it a slave state, while Nebraska would become free, due to the Northerners. The assumption was correct for Nebraska, however Kansas turned out to be taken advantage of differently. Anti-slavery and pro-slavery citizens flooded the state of Kansas in order to persuade their opinion to the government. Violence soon began between the two opposing sides in order to create the state that they want. A little while into the war, the border ruffians crossed into Kansas to help the pro-slavery side fight. These were people from Missouri who were for slavery in America because they did not enjoy the idea of free blacks living in neighboring areas. During the territorial elections in 1854 and 1855, the border ruffians crossed into Kansas to stuff the ballot boxes with pro-slavery votes. Even though they were too poor to own their own slaves, they hated the Yankees as well as the abolitionists. These feelings led them to attack the Free Soil community of Lawrence and burn numerous buildings. The Free Soilers were a group of people who loved their land more than they cared about slaves. They weren't necessarily abolitionists, but they opposed slavery since it would bring about plantation systems in Kansas. The cotton industry would force out the Free Soilers. The border ruffians attacked the Free Soilers because they were another opposition to the becoming of slavery in Kansas. Another important attack during the war was when John Brown led the abolitionists to attack a small pro-slavery settlement in Pottawatomie Creek. These events in Kansas demonstrated how deeply divided the country had become. When the new governor, John W. Geary, came to power, he forced the Missourians back to their homes in 1856. A tiny amount of peace followed, but a few violent outbreaks continued for several more years. In 1857, a constitutional convention was held for Kansas. They produced a draft for a pro-slavery document. This led the anti-slavery citizens to boycott for not being given a chance to vote against slavery. Therefore, President James Buchanan urged acceptance and statehood, so Congress ordered another election for whether Kansas will be free or not. This time, the pro-slavery individuals boycotted against the new election, allowing the abolitionists to steal the vote and claim victory. It was clear that Kansas was to be an anti-slavery state, so a new constitution was drafted with the views of an abolitionist. In the middle of 1869, this document was approved by the electorate with a 2-to-1 ratio. The Constitution was put into law admitting Kansas as a free state in January of 1861.